Hello, everyone. Oh my gosh, I am so excited. Welcome back to Adobe Live. We're here with Josh Iwata, and I am Sam Anderson, a designer at Adobe. We're going to have a blast today designing in real time some really fun things. We're playing with time. Get ready, get ready. Josh,
Sam, I think the
hello.
intro is just ending.
No, I think, yeah, there's a bit of a delay if you're watching it
Sorry.
yourself. It's all good.
Good way to start off.
Josh, tell us about yourself. What's up? Or actually, wait, we're gonna show we have a schedule. We wanna recap on what's happening today. It's not much. Today's a late day, but after this, so maybe you tuned in for earlier streams. Some of them were replays, some of them were live. But after this one, we are doing a hosted replay of the Daily Creative Challenge with Adobe XD. That's the same one from last week, but you can be sure to tune in, and the live chat will still be there for all of us to learn together live. So you have that to look forward to. Very exciting. Okay, now the moment we've all been waiting for. Josh, what's going on?
Hey, sorry for throwing you off there in the beginning. It just started playing and, I didn't know what was going on.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Hi.
So what's up?
Glad to be here.
Absolutely.
This is my fourth time back on Adobe Live. So it's my first time doing it digitally, though, over
it's
Zoom.
A bit different being digital, but, hopefully we can keep up that live energy. And even though we're not in the studio, and, keep it going for our wonderful viewers, because that's who we're here for. It's like those are the people. Who do we got in the chat? I'm not actually seeing the chat. Maybe I have to reload it. But for everyone that is joining, oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay, Voodoo Val. Oh my gosh, Tim, Pedro, Julia. Hey, a lot of names I recognized from when I streamed way back when. It's been a while. But I'm so glad we're all back here together. Josh, can you let's see what you have to offer? Like I'm very psyched. I'm very very psyched. So I'll just give the floor over to you.
Cool.
Let's do this.
Yeah, let me do a little introduction. I prepared a little slide deck here.
Fancy.
Here we go. So yeah, my name is Joshua Iwata. I'm a UI UX designer. And as I said, I was on Adobe Live 3 other times before this. And it was really funny mapping out the progression from first, second, third. Now, every time my hair and beard has gotten longer. So I'm like, about, at full Jesus right now. And I think probably the next phase is somewhere here if the pandemic just keeps going.
Oh no.
I can't get a haircut or a shave. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Let me give you a little bit of background.
Are we gonna do another stream when you're at this phase?
Yes, I hope so. That'll be number 5, right? I'll have a volleyball that I talked to. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of background about just kind of who I am and how I came about to be doing UI UX design. And then we'll talk about the project that we're going to do today, which I'm really, really excited about. So I started my career in illustration. I was actually doing illustration for like medical tests, like the little diagrams of how to perform medical tests for like AIDS, HIV tests. Which was really interesting and challenging. And then I started doing more illustration work. I did some illustrations for NBA teams for like their intros on the Jumbotrons at events. Didn't actually really like doing illustration. It got, to me, not something I wanted to keep doing full time. So moved into web design, graphic design, and then eventually into UI, UX design and product design. I've worked with some really nice big companies, but that's really not my bread and butter. I mainly work with startups now. And I ran a creative agency for a while as a director and kind of moved up into kind of leadership positions into product companies eventually, which is really where my passion is. So my last gig was with a company called Setmore, and I helped found that product and was kind of wearing all the hats, doing the design, doing the front end coding, working with the development team. Eventually grew that to a company of about 50 people, and they're still going strong. I left that about, I think 4 or 5 years ago. And it's still one of the leading online appointment scheduling apps. If you Google it, it's great if you own a salon or need to book appointments online for your business. And now, for the last 3 years, I've been with a startup called Class Hero, and I'm in a COO position there. We're an education technology startup, and we make a math system for schools, which has actually done great in the pandemic because everyone had to start using, remote tools, and EdTech was taken a lot more seriously. So my, I think it was maybe my last Adobe Live was doing Class Hero stuff. So, or maybe two times back was designing the student app. So if that sounds interesting, designing a kids app, you should take a look on YouTube or Behance.
Absolutely. It's a great opportunity to mention that if you are watching on YouTube, hop over to our Behance live stream where the Behance chat is. That's the chat that we'll be reading so you can interact with all of us.
All right. So today, now that I have my intro out of the way, we are going to be designing on a 100-year age-based calendar. So I'm really excited to do this. It's something that it's actually a project that I started a couple months ago with a friend. His name's James Mortensen, and he's one of the best developers I know. And so we're really just a two-man team. It's just a passion project for fun, but he's got the development skills. I've got front-end coding and design skills. So we kind of had this idea and decided to try it out. So we're actually in the middle of starting to build this out for reals. And I thought it would be a great project to do on Adobe Live because it's got some really interesting UI, UX problems to solve. And I think it'll lend itself well to some of the cool prototyping features that XD has to offer too.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I'm thrilled. Wait, I just keep quiet.
So I put this slide to remind me. So this idea kind of came about of a 100-year calendar because I have this tattoo that looks like the image that you're seeing on the screen right now. And that was a life bar that I got a few years ago, and it represents 100 years. And so it's got a line in the middle of the tattoo to mark the 50 year. I was 33 when I got it, so I filled it a third of the way up. And I'll fill it the rest of the way as I get older. When I get to 50, I'll probably fill it up to the 50-year mark, and then maybe every 5 or 10 years after that. So it kind of came about from this little tattoo that I had gotten a few years ago. And I started to kind of ask the question of, well, how would I see a 100-year or a whole lifespan using a calendar or an app? And I started to do some research, which is what you should do with any idea that you have. And found there were a lot of things like this. There were, there were not a lot of things like this, but there were some things like this. This is from waitbutwhy.com, which if you don't know that website or blog, it's a fantastic, blog, and it details really crazy things like, visualizing 1 million units of something or showing a lifespan. And so I found these type of life calendars really interesting, but obviously not very practical. They make a cool poster on a wall, but they're not interactive and they're not something that you could use. The other way that I saw people mapping out timelines was through a traditional timeline, which we've all seen in textbooks or at school. Now they have tools where you can kind of build out, timelines in this kind of linear fashion of people's lives. And so I kind of realized that I would need to combine the utility of a calendar that everyone was familiar with this kind of timeline view that people were also familiar with, and try to mash those up together somehow to create this 100-year age-based calendar. And again, all that will make more sense when we start going through the UI. And interrupt me, Sam, if there's chats or comments or questions that people have, feel free.
Oh, it's all good. There's one we'll get into after you start, I think. I'm really interested in.
Cool. Okay.
But it's all good. Keep going.
So the requirements that I had put in place were I wanted the user to be able to view 100 years all at once, explore timelines based on age rather than the year that they occurred. So you should be able to explore a timeline of someone who lived 100 years ago with your own timeline at the same time, so simultaneously in parallel. Experience other people's lives relative to your own. So I want to see what someone was doing when they were the same age as I am now, or what they were doing 10 years ago from where I am now. So now becomes this like relative term of where you're at in time. Give the user a new perspective, so a new way to think, something that these other timelines don't offer, because we're all just used to them and we see them all the time. And then allow for building custom timelines, so adding your family members, adding yourself, adding other people in history, so that there is some community involvement with something like this. So in order to do this on this live stream, these are kind of some of the skill developments that I'd like to display, and I hope that you'll take away from me going over this. Designing high definition mockups using Adobe XD, highly interactive prototypes, and we'll really get into that because XD has some really amazing prototyping features that I was actually surprised how far I could kind of push it in these prototyping interactive little micro interactions. And then insights into just what goes into developing a complex UI. And so if you're watching this feed and you have questions or you have comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. It is being monitored. Sam's watching it. Ask a question, interrupt, give feedback. I'd love it to be interactive as much as possible.
There we go. Absolutely. I'm stoked. Oh, you're still not done. Let's keep
going. Sorry. I'm almost done. And then I'll get into the stuff. Okay. So the last thing I was going to say was I would love to hear actual feedback from people who sign up for this. So this is an actual live project. I always try with XD. My other 3 streams have always been live projects, either from clients or from my startup that I work with. This one is something that's actually being built out. So you can go to above.app and you can actually get on the waiting list if you want to try this thing out. And I would love above all to have the XD community kind of like be involved with giving feedback and helping with the design. And, maybe there'll be an update if I come back at some point and add features. Okay.
What a thrilling opportunity that we get to design a real thing that's going into the world that's currently work in progress. I feel like that's so amazing because so often on here we're talking about concepts or we're designing like hypotheticals, but everyone, this is the real deal. This is the real deal. Josh, I'd love to see you hop in and start designing as you get your things ready, and then as we're doing that, we can talk about this question that Emily had, who said, "How do you negotiate a budget with startups? They usually don't have a lot of money. I suppose you're probably landing gigs with startups that have a lot of money." maybe not. and then she also said, to give a little bit more context, I've encountered a few startups that just don't have the budget for properly priced identity design project or website.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really part of that is the type of startups that you're working with. It probably depends kind of on where you're at in your career. And if you're just starting out and you're working with startups that don't have a big budget, you may be charging a little less. But I do think meeting clients kind of where they're at and deciding what's worth it for you, right? Like if the client doesn't have the budget to pay you what your time is worth, that probably just has to be a no, right? I mean, unless you really are desperate for the work. But there's this fallacy that comes up where people think, if I say no to this project, that means I won't get another project because I've used up my project that's going to come my way. But the reality is the likelihood of the next project coming along is not dependent on whether or not you turn down that current project. It's not really the way it works. Flipping a coin doesn't change because you landed on heads the time before, even though we feel like that's the case. So when I work with startups, I meet with them and then I give them, and I'll move on here in a minute, but I give them a proposal. So I have one meeting, which is kind of this download interview, and then I give them a proposal, and the proposal has a breakdown of the price in there right up front. And something I learned really early on is you want to give a client an idea of the real price. And if sticker shock happens, then they are the wrong client, because they will be a pain in the butt. And that has happened over and over throughout the 15 years of designing. Any client who seems sticker shocked and then agrees to the project, they want to squeeze like every ounce out of you. And it's a miserable experience. I don't know if you've had that experience, Sam, but
I don't do much freelance work, but it was my entryway to design. And I did design work on Fiverr. So we were talking
Oh,
very,
oh
very
yeah.
low cost projects. I was in high school, so it's okay. But I do know, like revision after revision, and my net profit was $4. So,
No.
uh,
Oh, painful.
but we do what we have to do, and now I'm at Adobe, right? So things
Right.
worked out.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's always going to be those first steps, like you're saying, and there's that negotiation of price, finding the right client fit with you, how you want to work as a designer too.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually in the past I've tried to convince a couple people at Adobe to let me do a stream on just the business of freelance. But so if you really want that, bombard Adobe in the chat with it.
That could be a great stream. I think a lot of freelancers would probably be interested in doing that.
Yeah.
Like you could kind of like overlap your time, like you're actually doing your freelance design work and you're on a live stream. It's like, hey,
I did that. I did that with one of my streams. I was working on client work, and the client, I asked if I could do it, and they were like, sure. And so
there you go.
the community was like helping me decide what colors to pick and things. It was funny. It made the client like nervous. They were like, wait, I wanted this one, but everyone in the stream said they like this color instead. Well, maybe we should go with that. So it was like design in real time. It was
That's
fun.
great. Oh, I love that. You get to have the chat on your side.
Yeah, but in terms of pricing, I would always write out a proposal, break down what you think the price will be in an hourly range. I always do that. So I say I break it down and I say it's going to be 40 to 55 hours, and then I put the hourly rate in there so they can do the math and they can say, oh, it's going to be, it's $7,000 to $9,000. That's the range. And then, we try to stay within that range. So that's how I break down things.
That's good. Oh my God. Lindsay, Raphael, Laura, they all are into this idea of a freelance stream. So people are interested.
Okay.
Thanks for chiming in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
That's fun.
All right. So the last thing I want to say before I start designing is that Adobe XD live stream is awesome, but it is kind of like a cooking show. You don't see all of the prep that goes into doing this. The veggies are being chopped. The pre-baked casserole is like under the counter. I mean, there's so much prep that goes into doing 2 or 4 hours. And then at the end of the day, you just see the designers coming on here and we're like, yeah, we're just like whipping together this thing. And it's like, it only took 4 hours. So, I mean, how do you even make money if it only takes 4 hours to design an entire website, right? That's not true. So a little bit of that, and I'm not going to go over all this because this is something you guys, I think, should learn on your own. But I think if you haven't heard the term design thinking as a new designer, if you're not familiar with it, or if you need a refresh on it, I would just type in design thinking. This is from Nielsen Norman Group. I think it's nngroup.com. Yeah. And it's the process of how good design comes about. It is not something, it's not like art. I'm a painter. I can paint and then people like it or they don't. But good design with good outcomes means you go through a process where you empathize, you define, you come up with ideas, you prototype, you test it, and then you implement it. And at any point you go back to any of those steps. It's not a one-way stream here. So you have to go backwards and you have to figure out what the client likes in the very, very early stages. You can't just go all the way to the end like we do on the stream, or you're going to come back with, you just spent a week of your life on a logo and the client hates it. Instead, you need to go take them through this process of design thinking. And that applies to whether you are building an app or a website or a space shuttle or a chair. It doesn't matter. You have to use the process of design thinking for good outcomes. It's really, really important. I'm a big advocate for creating a process that is based around this. Design thinking, this process, by the way, did not come about. Someone didn't create it. It came about because people started making tools, right? They started carving arrowheads and making wheels, and they had to do trial and error. And so this is it's just a mapping and observation of how people create well-designed things. So I'll look that up if you're unfamiliar with that.
Yeah, it's something every designer should know for sure.
Yeah.
Certainly like a cornerstone of design school when I went to design school.
Absolutely.
Everything from research to learning how to work with a developer. Key. key parts. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a cooking show. I've never heard that analogy before, but it's like
Oh,
very
I totally
accurate.
feel that way. Because people say,
Uh,
"Oh, you're only doing 4 hours of stream. That's all you got." I'm like, no, I've got to do like days of work to get to this point. To make
yeah,
everything ready. So okay, I'll shut up. Well, I won't shut up actually, but I will start designing while I'm talking versus doing a slideshow.
I'm
So let me.
so thrilled. Here we go. So you set up the context for what kind of problem we're solving today. The 100-year calendar, an age-based calendar. Where are we starting? We're starting in XD. I see. We're moving over.
We're gonna start in XD. So let me show you some of the setup that I've got. Some of the veggies are chopped, so that we can go a little faster. I started out with two things. One is with these are some of the elements that I need for this stream. So it's kind of the stuff hidden under the counter, but basically a color palette, my logo, and then some facts and things that I need. Typically, I would kind of have a full mood board. This is kind of an example of a simple mood board, but having a full mood board is really helpful. And I actually have that. I have a version of, I think, one of the mood boards from a previous stream on my site. You can download if you need that. But Adobe has tons of resources for XD. So I have this, and then I also started with what I would call a block frame. And a block frame is like a low fidelity wireframe. I didn't want to spend too much time on mapping out all the wireframes because I want to get into the prototyping aspect of this. But usually you would kind of move from something like this and then basically put in all the details and then put in all the design. We don't have time to do all of that with this stream. So we're going to jump kind of from block frame to high def mockup. And this is a basic template for that block frame that was requested the last time I streamed, and you can get that from my site. It's just iwata.io if you want that. But it's pretty easy to make it yourself. It's just literally rectangles and gray colors, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, an alternative to this, depending on what floats your boat, it could be to break out a sketchbook and just and draw it, right?
Totally. Yeah. Block framing, wireframing, you can do paper prototypes as well. In fact, usually the block framing for a lot of people only happens on paper. They'll just do it on a sketchbook. It'll be about this. It'll just be kind of quick layouts and sketches, thumbnails, that kind of thing. I've found over the years have become more comfortable doing it almost purely on the computer versus the paper, but you can definitely do it. You can even do high def wireframes on paper if you want to. It's up to you. But the idea is that you do need to have some sort of a starting point before you just jump into making high def mockups, because there's too many decisions involved with those. The wireframes take out the decision making, so you're not worried about what shade of blue or red to use while you're trying to get the basic layout, right?
Absolutely. So crucial.
So let's start. I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to start kind of bringing this to life with this basic kind of simple mood board that I'd put together. So I'm going to grab a few elements here. I'm going to bring them over and pop them in place. So I'll put my icon up here.
Nice. What decided, where did the icon come about? Can you tell us the story behind the logo? And
yeah, so the icon is actually, well, the logo is a play on kind of the word above. So I took the crossbar from the A and I moved it up above the A. And I think, and it also represents kind of a timeline. So I thought it was a good kind of representation of what the app is about. And then the icon is, I wanted it to have a calendar feel, because I think when you create new UI, you really want it to be familiar. If it doesn't feel familiar, it's going to be hard for people to grasp. So when you come up with a new concept, especially something like this, which is a little bit of a fringe concept, I guess, the more familiar it can feel off the bat, the more usable and easy it's going to be for people to get started with it. And so I wanted to create this little calendar icon, but then use the A from the logo as this kind of compass, because that's that's kind of the idea, is that it's a calendar that lets you explore, timeline, and where you're going and where other people have gone. So
yeah, you're navigating time in a way. And for
yeah,
anyone
exactly.
that's just joining us, I see lots of people are joining in. Thank you, Diego and Ramon and Jessica and people that have joined just more recently. We're designing a 100-year lifelong timeline, basically in the form of this digital app, and it's a way of kind of tracking life progress. And this is you brought up like making it familiar, tying it to existing paradigms like an existing calendar, and you're doing that with the icon, and I imagine we'll do that with other parts of the interface. But this is a new paradigm. Like, this isn't a pattern that exists. You are inventing a new way to kind of look at time. Most of our products just simply don't think about laying out time at that scale. This is a new scale, and I'm really curious to see what it starts to feel like.
Yeah, and by doing this, it's interesting because just by prototyping the app itself, I've learned and experienced new things about my own family members, about people through history. And if you're just joining, this is today in the US, it's Martin Luther King Day. And if you're in the US, you know who Martin Luther King is. You grew up with him in school. If you're outside, you might not know, but he was probably the most iconic civil rights leader of our, of the last 100 years for sure. And today is the day we kind of celebrate and talk about him. And so I thought it would be appropriate to map out his timeline as we do this. So I'm just kind of setting up colors. I just took this button, I rounded the corners to a 6-point border radius. I'm going to group that with the text here. And I'm actually going to hit Command K, which will turn that into a component. And with the components, you're going to be able to add multiple states, which is a really exciting thing now that you did not used to be able to do. And you do that by going up to the upper right-hand side, component main, and then it says default state here. You can add a new state, and I'll add a hover state. Okay. And when you are editing a hover state, it's really important to know you have to click into the component if you want to alter things, or else it's not going to change just that state. So the way you know you're clicked into a component is when you double click and it goes from green to blue. So now that it's blue, I could do something like add a shadow. So let me I'll add this kind of nice colorized shadow with a little bit of red. Take out the opacity just so it's kind of a glow, right?
Cool. Can you zoom in just a tad for us, just so we can get up close and personal with
There we go. I forget on this big screen, it does not look big on your little monitors.
It's okay.
Okay, there we go. I can't zoom in on the whole interface, can I? I can't make these components.
No, that's fine. But I think we got that.
Okay.
That part.
So, and then you have to click back over to default state so that you, or else it'll stay on hover state. And you can actually start prototyping and testing immediately. And you see there, it pops over and you've got that. And we can play and mess with these transitions a little later, but I just want to get kind of the basic setup going here. Okay, so now I'm gonna take these form fields. I'm gonna change the gray to a little bit of a warmer. Oh, actually, I can import my color palette. Let me do that.
There we go. You've already done this. Yes, that's a gorgeous color palette.
Oh, thank you. Paste it in here, and what's really cool is in your components library, which it's a little tricky to find if you haven't used XD much. It's in the lower left-hand side, these little tiny icons. You go to library, and then you can select a number of colors and hit the colors plus button, and they will all pop in into your color palette, which is really amazing. So now you have access to those all at the same time. Oops. So I'm going to grab these and I'm going to match them to, let's see.
Nice little slight tone of, it's not exactly gray, is it? They're tones off.
No, it's a little bit blue gray.
A little bit cool.
I'll add a 6-point radius.
And just back to a question or not a question, a comment from Rachel saying that I sketch out the most crazy illegible thumbnail sketches that only I can understand with the concepts. I think that's okay. It depends on like the point that you are. I'm curious what your take on it is, Josh. But if you're sketching for yourself, my view is that if you're not going to have to show it to a client later, it's okay if only you understand it.
I agree. If you're not going to show it to a client, then it doesn't have to be pretty. And actually, one of the things that I say to my clients is that wireframes, it's okay if they're ugly. And part of the reason is we're definitely in we're in an era where like people love making beautiful wireframes and showing them off on Behance, and I think that's great. And I do very high definition wireframes, but your client should know that's not the end product, right? Because so many times if you do a really beautiful wireframe, they go, oh, I love it, but could we add like a little more color? You're like, no, it's a wire. Okay, so I will actually make them intentionally ugly, and then it separates it a little bit from what the end result's going to be. I just saw someone said, how do you choose your color palette? For me, this was just chosen by, I guess I've just worked with colors enough that I kind of understand what a good palette will be. But one of the things you want to do is try to match the kind of values to each other a little bit. So to have, for example, this purple in here, if you made that really dark, that might not match so well with the value of everything else here. But really, it's hard when you're doing a rainbow color palette. One of the easy ways to do is to go look at color palettes on the internet. I think, doesn't Adobe have
Adobe Color. Check it out.
Adobe Color. There you go.
Absolutely. You can
some of it is just
trial
and error, and some of it is experience of learning what colors go with what.
It's also not arbitrary because choosing colors has a heavy influence on accessibility, and so you want to make sure that you're choosing colors within a context. Like if this is a text color, you want to make sure what is it going to be on top of, and make sure that's a high contrast color, right? Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so
we have some fans of MLK in the chat too. Rachel was saying that Dr. King was only 35 when he had the "I Have a Dream" speech.
Yes.
Can you imagine making history at 35? Just, wow.
It's amazing. To see his life played out when he was so young. I mean, he died when he was 39. Mm-hmm. It's heartbreaking, but it also realizes how much he got done in such a short amount of time. I mean, he did a lot. I'm
really curious to see how it will look in above his lifespan.
That'll be fun. And I think I definitely learned something by doing it. One of my, since you're tight with the Adobe XD team, one of the things that I have had a hard time with is you add all your colors here to the palette, but then you've got to add them individually to the swatches. Is that right?
Yeah. So they work a little differently. So the swatches, you can kind of think of those as like the ad hoc color palette if you're a painter that's just like a scratch pad. And then you can think of the ones on the left as your official brand assets. And you can apply them straight from selecting.
Directly.
Yeah. So you don't need to have them in both places. But yeah, they are different. And the team chose that intentionally so that you can have like that flexibility, like an artist having like a scratch pad of colors that you're working with just on that document, and you're not actually interrupting the library of colors that might be connected to your team's shared library. That's your official like
that makes
assets.
sense, actually.
Yeah.
If you're a like solo designer like I am, you don't think about the interconnectivity of components being across multiple documents and that kind of thing. But if you're a team, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to close this. I'm going to add I have an image here, and I'm going to add a background behind this login screen to make it a little more interesting. So I'm going to paste this here. I'm going to send it to the back with Control-Shift-Left bracket, which is a fully send all the way to the back. And then I'm going to hold down Shift, and Alt Option. And what that does is it makes it grow from the center, and it lets you resize equally on all sides, which can be useful when you're resizing a large image like this.
I dig it.
So I'm going to make that I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to make that keep going. It's off. You can see it's off canvas, but I want it to be big because I'm actually going to animate this a little bit in a minute. So one of the things I see here is, you see how and this is common, the photo doesn't go exactly up to the top of the screen where you want it. There's a neat trick you can do with just a faded rectangle. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a rectangle. I'm going to fill it with a gradient, a linear gradient. And then I'm going to make the top white. I'm going to make the bottom white, but then I'm going to turn the opacity all the way down. I'm going to grab that top bar of this gradient and pull it down. And so it's going to fade. It's going to create a nice fade. And obviously I need to move it to the back now. But now I've got this kind of like nice white that fades, almost like the clouds are disappearing into the sky, right? It's a nice trick. I use it all the time. I know a lot of artists and designers do. When you have an image that's like almost right, but not quite right, doing the fade it's a neat hack. So another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the opacity down on this because I don't need it to be quite that. I don't need it to be quite that.
Yeah,
there we go.
Look at this design, fully spruced up now.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I'm taking it. What led you to choose mountains? Is that representing something? Did you just like the aesthetic of it?
I liked the idea of doing something that was representing kind of being above the name, right? Someone just said, Voodoo Val said, I can't believe how such a simple move just made that look expensive.
Expensive.
I like that. I like that term. That's nice.
That's great. Funny. I think as any designer, we want our designs to look expensive.
We do.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Another little thing that I just did was I wanted to make this text a little more legible, create an account, because it does have some background noise behind it. So I just added like a white shadow behind it, which just makes the words glow a little and pop off the screen. So there's still a little bit low visibility, but I think that would be it's a nice little trick too to add a drop shadow to things in a certain color. Okay, I'm not totally happy with that. Maybe I'll just pull this down and
put it right in. Yeah, when in doubt,
right in there. Go
for the more legible option. Is my bet.
Yeah, I agree. What do you guys think? Should it be in red, or is that competing too much? What do you think, Sam?
You could go either way. I see red is you chose a very hard color to work with, because when I see red text, I'm like, oh, that's a negative action. But Airbnb pulls it off well.
Text much.
Yelp pulls it off well. Eventbrite pulls it off well. So it's definitely not unheard of to use red as a main color.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll leave it for now. I was also going to notice or mention too that I made these form fields into components, and if you resize them, Adobe XD it's smart enough. It knows to pin the words to the text to the side of the component, which is a really awesome feature. You can change that if you want, but it's a nice, easy way to start creating form fields really easily. Someone is saying, I'd like a little more. Oh, my twin brother is in here now saying no red. Thanks, Matt.
You got to have feedback from your brother. Absolutely. What would the stream be without it, right?
Well, someone is saying they want more color, but part of the reason I didn't do, I'm going to leave it basically monochromatic, is because once we start putting all of the events on the calendar, it's going to get really colorful. And so I don't think we want to really add any more than what we have.
In fact, I think most scenarios, most digital apps and things really only need as many colors as are on the screen. But in the case of having a calendar with so many different amounts, I mean, it's really almost like information design, and you really need to start like data visualization. You need to start pulling in more colors to have that ability to articulate on different levels. But nothing wrong with more color, for sure. but I like the idea of reserving it for the main experience.
Yeah. So, you know, not everyone's going to be happy with red, but we'll go with it for now. So the next thing I'm going to do is do a little splash screen in animation. So I'm going to duplicate this entire artboard. Okay. And then, oops, it's overlapping with my other artboards. What I love is like the infinite space you get with where you can just make these as many artboards as you want. And XD like does not slow down, which is really amazing. Actually, sorry, I need to group this stuff because I want to animate it first. Okay, so I'm gonna group that. Make sure that's grouped. Okay, and then I'm gonna move the whole artboard over. Because when you do transitions or auto animation specifically, you need to make sure the elements, you're not like grouping on one and going back and grouping on another. It's going to mess up the animation.
It's the layer names to be watching out for. If something's not right with your animations, yeah, it's the grouping or the layer names that you want to pay attention to. And people in the chat, like Kevin and Jessica, love the red, actually. They
like the, okay.
They're big fans of the red, actually. Kevin said warm, but not aggressive.
That's how people have described me. So I'm just trying to pick a color that, you know.
There you go.
Okay, so I took this whole thing and I moved it down, and then I'm going to remove the transparency or put the transparency to 0, because then it's going to make that look like it's fading down. So let me show you a little example of that. So I'm going to take this in prototyping. I'm going to, I got to add, because there's already a hover, I need to add a second interaction to that button. And on tap, I want it to auto animate to main 2. Okay, let's just see what that looks like real quick. Okay, we've got our hover, click, and it fades away.
Butter.
Neat, right? I don't like the ease in. I want it to be an ease out since it's disappearing. And you'll see that that feels a little bit different. There we go. So that disappears. And then I want to put a splash screen and load some things on here. So I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to make this screen go to a new screen. And I'm going to do a time on this. So I'm going to say, okay, I want this screen to go to this new one.
Automatically.
So I'm going to put time on there. So then there's no interaction. So it'll fade out, it'll land on this empty screen, and then it'll automatically go to the next one. And I can set the time for duration 1 second, or I could say, let's say 0.5 seconds. Oh, can you not go less than? Oh, you can. For some reason, only even though. No.
You can do anytime. You just have to type it in manually. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna go here, and from here, what I want to do is I'm gonna remove this because that's gone now. I'm gonna add. Let's see, this logo. Okay.
Nice.
Oops. Oh, I need to get out of prototype mode.
There you go. And so what's this next screen? Is it like the welcome, the first onboarding?
This next screen is going to be the load screen.
Okay.
So it's going to go from here to here to here, and it's going to start loading. So the end result, I want this to be, I'm going to make this mountain move. I'm going to kind of zoom it out and move it down. Oops, I need to take that fade with me and move it down. And then I want this above logo to be here.
Right at that fade. Nice. Yep.
So I'm actually kind of, looks like maybe my fill is not.
Almost the same
Where's
color.
my fade? Interesting. That should be, is my background not, it's not white.
Yeah, the background's not fully white.
There
you go.
Okay.
Laura's asking, what's the typeface you used in the logo?
I think, I'm not sure.
Oh,
I should know that.
That's okay.
I think it may have just been Roboto, actually.
Oh,
it was just a simple. Yeah. So I'm gonna put a load bar at the top here too, and I'm kind of doing this backwards, so I apologize.
Oh, it's all good.
Let's see. Let's just see what this looks like.
Yeah, see what it looks like right now. Ah.
There we go.
So yeah, that mountain kind of shrinks. It's almost like you're kind of zooming out, like a camera, like almost parallax shift feeling, right?
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Sam, because I sometimes get confused with the animating. If I copy this layer and put it on this previous one it's coming from, will that apply auto animate to that as long as the layer name's the same? Okay, so I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna put it there, and I'm gonna move this down and turn the opacity down.
There you go.
So now we're gonna get this kind of, yes, we're gonna get that. Okay.
That looks good.
Okay, so now we need to slow that animation down a little bit. It's a little too fast.
A lot of people forget to add loading states, and it's one of those things that once you start working with engineers that you start to understand that makes your design a little bit more real is these little tiny things like loading states that make a product real as opposed to just a concept, because there's always going to be those technical limitations.
I think that is so true. I think that's one of the really beautiful things about XD is it lets you get all of those little micro interactions without, you don't have to describe them to the engineers or the developers. You can just do it. So the last thing I'm going to do is I want this load bar at the top. I want that to load in the next screen. So on this screen previously, I'm going to turn it, I'm going to turn it all the way down. Oops, that did not work. I don't know why there we go. Okay, so I'm going to turn that load bar all the way down. And then I'm going to time this screen. I know this is kind of a lot of timing and
it's a chain reaction. No, this is
it's a chain reaction. So now
fundamental of animating.
Yes, this is going to be timed to here, and that's going to auto animate. Let's make that like 1.5 seconds. Oops, sorry. And now let's see what we got. Oh, that did not do what I wanted it to, though.
Oh,
I wonder why.
Let's see it again.
Okay, we got that. You see how it just faded and it didn't grow?
I bet you the layer names are different.
Okay.
Yeah, let's check those out. Most likely to be the problem.
So by matching the layer names, that will.
Sometimes when you copy and paste, it'll add a number after the layer name.
Line 5. Oh, I wonder if it's because I converted it into a path.
Oh, that could be
why?
It too. That could be it too. Is the layer name the same? I can't see.
One is
exactly.
No, it's different.
Okay.
So I'll just paste it in here in the new one.
Yeah, that's always a safe bet, just to repaste it.
Yeah, these animations, it's interesting because I used to work with Adobe Flash, and this is like approaching that, where you can have like movies inside of movies, all nested within each other.
There's a lot you can do. R.I.P. Flash, really by the way.
I know. Okay, let's try this out now. Okay, we log in. The load screen happens. The load bar happens. Boom. Nice. Great. Okay, and then we're going to do one more where with this times out and it goes to our main screen, and we'll just fade it so we're not being too crazy.
Absolutely. There you go.
And then we can start doing some of the work. Time. Yep.
Golden Rose is saying, I've been concerned about having so many artboards. You're new to all this. and or this person is new to all this, and I wasn't sure how detailed my work should be. I think it depends. Right now, we're working at this like kind of high fidelity stage, right, where we're finessing all these animations, so it makes sense to be working at this level. But if you're earlier in your design process, you probably don't need to worry so much about all these. What's your take, Josh?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, look, some of my XD files have dozens of artboards, so I wouldn't be concerned about that. It can be kind of crazy and confusing, but I tend to hook up even when I'm doing a website design for someone, I'll do all the screens, hook them all up. It's all prototyped. It's all ready to go. The client can experience it, and there's no surprises when we build it out, So I wouldn't be concerned about the number. And in fact, I was shown the secret file that XD uses to test new builds, and it has like 1,000 artboards on it.
Oh,
I mean, no joke.
Yeah, no,
that
it's huge.
thing was insane. It
It'll
had like
take
1,000 artboards, and it didn't slow down. Which, to me, every other app that I've used that's a competitor of XD, it chugs when you start doing that, and this one does not. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I would be concerned with if you're having a hard time keeping them straight, though. You might have to create multiple files or something. Yeah,
it becomes the key factor there.
Okay, so we've got our little animation. I think it's a good way to start. Let's move into actually designing our calendar now, because that's kind of where the fun stuff starts.
This is the moment I've been waiting for. The real I like how you just put calendar in the middle. Like, I can't wait to see what it actually looks like.
This is my block framing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start kind of from the left to the right. Let's get out of prototype mode, which, by the way, if you're a beginner in XD, it can be maddening, not realizing you're in prototype mode. You're like clicking on things like, why can't I do? Oh, it's because I haven't clicked on this tab in the upper left-hand side. You got to stay in design mode if you want to work with elements. So I'm going to grab the logo from here. I'm going to put it up here, and we're going to start. This is kind of like when you have a drawing and you start, painting and adding in all the color and everything comes to life, which is, to me, it's a really enjoyable thing to do.
You have your sketch, now you're filling in the details.
We've got a button we can use. So we have a component here we can grab. So I don't need to create a button from scratch. And then I have definitely seen it demoed where you can add, if you want to have a light button or an outline button or a gray button, you can use multiple states. I believe the issue with that is you don't get hover states for every state. You can only have one hover state per component. Is that right, Sam?
I believe you might only be able to have one hover state. I'm not up to date on that exact specific, but that's a good question. If you can have multiple hover states per component, I'd have to try it out to know for sure. Sorry, my XD knowledge is letting me down. But my initial thought when you brought that up was that you could, but I could be wrong. I can try it out on my end, so you can keep working. I'll let you know if it's the case or not.
So I want to make two buttons over on the left-hand side here. I've got login and I've got explore. Login shouldn't be login though. It should be add new, because it's if you want to add a new timeline or a new event. So I've got add new, I've got explore, and then I'm going to start building out the kind of timelines here. And I'll do that. I have these kind of placeholders, but I'm going to delete them because I want to use repeat grid, which is like my favorite feature.
So I've been there since the beginning of XD, and it continues to amaze. The repeat grid
standout feature.
Absolutely.
What's funny is on one of my streams, I said repeat grid so many times. Someone said they should turn it into a drinking game.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
wow,
I've got good news, Josh. You can have multiple hover triggers on a component per state, so it'll work out for you. Yeah.
Should we do that? Should we try to go through it?
You can if you want to have like the white style as a different.
Okay, so if I'm going to go over here and So now okay, so I have to edit the main component to add new states. Is that right?
Yeah.
Because right now I'm on component instance.
Yeah.
So I need to say edit main component. Okay. And if I add a new state, and let's call it white, go in here, double click.
And this one's just going to have a border, is it? Or okay.
Actually, let's make it like a light gray, just as an example of a button we might want to use. Okay. So let's do that. So how would I add a hover state to this now?
Basically, now you go to the plus button, add another one. Yeah, and then you go over back to prototype mode on that white state. And then you can set a trigger as hover to go to that.
Okay. So there's only one that pops up with this option in
exactly.
the first, but then you can create subversions.
Exactly, in prototyping mode. And that first option is kind of just to auto wire it for you as get you started without having to go into prototyping mode. But yeah, you can have.
Got it. Okay, so I'm gonna just do this for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna go into prototype. I'm gonna click here. I'm gonna click back to white.
Yeah, you want to make sure you have that state selected.
And then I want to say destination. Oh no.
Go to the trigger, and instead of tap, to
hover. To state. Amazing.
Boom, boom, boom.
Oh, wow. That made my life easier.
Design systems, everyone.
Wow. That's cool. And if we want to finesse that, right, we can.
Yep. It's
instead of auto animate, we can transition.
Yep.
Or we could say, transition, dissolve. That's too slow. It needs to be like.
And Mansoor is asking, I wanted to know how to do pop-up alerts in Adobe XD. And I'll just tell you, there's a feature called overlays, where if you design your pop-up as an overlay artboard, basically just a separate artboard from your design, and then you can wire whatever your trigger is to that pop-up, whatever's triggering that pop-up. If it's a button, you press a button and that's going to trigger the pop-up, and you set that interaction type to overlay. That'll be what you're looking for. Also, you can Google how to use the overlays feature in XD. That'll probably be what you're looking for, Mansoor. It's very handy. One of the underutilized features in XD, I think. Now, boom, we're using the same button component, just in a different state.
Same button in a different state. Is it gonna do a weird? Sorry. So one of the things you can do too with prototype is you can set your home screen so you don't have to go through the animation every time. Is it going to resize when I hover? It does resize though. So I have to set that size on with each button when I make a new component. Is that? I was surprised it did that.
Yeah. That's less than ideal, isn't it? You might have to adjust it.
I wonder if it will.
Yeah.
Oh, because that one does it too. That's too bad.
It is not fun.
Not what I would expect behavior-wise. Okay, but we're gonna move on. I don't want to get too caught up in this.
I think that's a smart move. Yeah, you could basically in this situation, you could adjust those individual states for that smaller size.
Okay,
and it would just be a matter of shrinking them.
Explore. And then we're going to do timeline. So I'm going to set up E for ellipse. This is where the little images will go. Okay.
And these are images of people?
These are going to be images of people. This is where each of the timelines will go for Martin Luther King, for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, my dad, whoever you want to put on here.
Anyone you want. Helps if you can spell though. It's okay. And okay, so this is a list of all the people with timelines in the app, it seems. Are you viewing one at
Yeah.
a time? Is there only one selected?
You're going to be able to view all of them at the same time, actually.
Oh, immaculate.
I know it's going to, it'll be interesting.
Hence all the colors, I imagine.
It'll be a journey. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Oops. Okay. So we'll move this guy up. One of the things I have in this little document, my cheat sheet, is how old they were. Okay. So we'll say, let me grab this. I don't actually think he was 37. He was 39 when he died, I think.
Yeah, young.
So
it's a tragedy.
Very young, yeah. We'll put 39 years old under here. We'll make that smaller.
Mm-hmm.
We'll bold this so it stands out a little more. Okay. Maybe medium. It's a little fat.
And this is going back to your emphasis on this timeline being this 100-year timeline for anyone that's joining new. This is a 100-year timeline where you can see the lives of anyone and see it against maybe your own life or just compare. And you're putting the age in there because it's not actually relevant the time span that they were alive. It's more so their age, because this is an age-based calendar, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So bringing your philosophy of the product into the UI design and making sure you're consistent throughout your messaging is key.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead, grab this, and then I want to do a hover state for each of the items over here on the left-hand side. So I'm going to turn that into a component with Command K. And then I'm going to add a hover state. I'm going to go to that hover state. I got to click into it. And then I'm going to add this kind of white background. And we'll turn the borders 6 to be consistent with other things. And then we'll switch back to default state. Let's try that. Oops. I want this to be, there we go. There we go. So we got a nice little hover there now, right?
Just shows you that the cursor is there. Easy.
Yep. Now I'm gonna repeat grid this.
Boom.
Look at that.
Oh.
We'll do 4 of them, I guess.
And each of those will maintain those states and
yes.
ideas that we can just change those names out and be good to go, right?
That's right. So let me look at my cheat sheet. I'll just grab this and bring it over.
Oh, there you go. You have all the info you need.
Mitsuo Iwata, which is my father. He was 65 years old when he died. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was 87 years old. And one of the things that I learned by doing this was that Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Martin Luther King were born only 4 years apart, which is really crazy. He was born 1929. She was born 1933. And it was really crazy to think about when you run people's timelines in parallel that we could have grown up with Martin Luther King being in our lives, being on TV, being on CNN. I mean, he could have been, it's a really tragic thing to think about, that we weren't just robbed of a person at the time, we were robbed of the next 50 years they could have contributed to our society, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll say Steve Jobs was 56 when he died. And, oh, you know who I'm forgetting is, I'm forgetting myself.
Ah, the key component, because you are the user of this app in this scenario, right?
Yes. And unfortunately, I am 37 years old, which is too bad, but that's just how it is.
It's not too bad. Don't worry.
Now, I have some images I want to drop in here, but I think because these are components,
I'm just
I am
laughing because
you're laughing
Marcia said, I think at my age, I need a below app. I just thought that was so funny. Don't worry, Marcia, you're fine.
So I just did this. I put Martin Luther King in here, but it added him to every single one. If I want to add individual ones, I guess I'm going to have to break the repeat grid for this group. Is that right? If I want to change out the icons?
Basically, where are your images? If you pull, so if you just click and drag all of them over, just click and drag multiple, and into that image, and it'll fill with multiple.
But I think because the repeat grid is made up of a component.
Oh, okay.
And that behavior won't work.
Yeah, because it is the component. You could just individually go into each component and replace the image. You don't have to ungroup the component or ungroup the grid.
Okay, so I could go in here and...
Because they aren't the master components, so the main components.
Okay, so I just have to click into it. Good. Thank you. These are things that I still find sometimes confusing, like what works with components, grids. So I think it's actually good to demonstrate it on here, because you could say, okay, this is actually how it works.
It does take a little bit of finesse sometimes, and it takes knowing the tool a little bit.
Yep. Now let's see if I add a border. So that's going to be okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna add a little ring around each of these.
Let's zoom in. Let's get a closer.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Please tell me when I need to zoom in, because I'm working on a big screen, so I can't always see what I'm doing. I'm gonna add a ring around each of these to symbolize the color of that particular calendar.
Nice.
Okay, so let's make this size a little bigger.
Rachel coming in with MLK fact number 2. I love that you're contributing these. Dr. King went off script and improvised the latter half of his famous speech, drawing from his previous sermons and speeches. This included the famous "I Have a Dream" portion. Wow, thank you for including these.
Yeah, that's awesome.
This information.
I appreciate that. Keep them coming.
Absolutely. And Rachel says, you look young for 37. What's your secret?
Thank you, Rachel. It's the Zoom filter that you click. It says improve my appearance. That's the secret.
It's saving everyone in a pandemic.
Right? Okay.
So
we're just adding colored rings to each of our little characters here.
Fun fact, you don't have to use the eyedropper. If you hold down Shift and click those colors in the left, it'll apply it to the border. Shift click.
Okay.
Apply it to the border.
That doesn't seem...
Oh, does it not? Or maybe right click? Just right click and then apply to border?
No. Maybe it's one of these other ones. Alt? Option? No?
Okay, well, my bad. I thought there was a way to do it.
Oh, let me make sure you're not right. Okay, well, that's... I guess I don't... Yeah. It wasn't working with the... Okay, so let's give Steve a pink ring.
Yeah, why not?
And then for my timeline, I'm gonna make that red, and I kind of want that like to always be that red color.
Like you said, that's your color of what you were going for with your personality, right?
Yeah.
I love these illustrations.
I don't have a picture of me, but I'll put Pierre because he looks. So this illustrations, I meant to include the artist. I'll link tomorrow. I'll put it in the presentation, because he had these base characters like this, and then I used those as a base, and then I created the famous characters like Steve Jobs and Martin Luther King and my dad. So I just used it as a base, and then I made my own.
That's a great way to view like adapting other people's work and still making it your own. So you're not like completely taking it. A great way to navigate that without having to start from scratch. Shift right click. Jennifer says.
Shift right. Let me try that. Shift right click. Apply board. There we go. Apply border color.
There we go.
Thank
I knew there was a way. Thank you. Jennifer, saving the day. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
And Esther is saying, this is great school prep for my IXD classes this semester. Hey, that's good. You know, knowing the tool, getting an eye into the design process, like we were talking about earlier, understanding all of that, just getting into the design live here. It's a great way to prep for your classes. I hope you're excited. I'm excited for you, for your classes.
Okay, cool. All right, let's get into the main section here. So one of the things that I want to put at the top here, well, actually, let me lay down a rectangle here because I want a little drop shadow behind this.
Nice.
So I'm gonna add a big shadow so that I get this shadow on the left side. Let me zoom in more for you. Okay. Because then I get this little overlap, which is nice, right? I'm gonna lock that so it doesn't go anywhere. I'll lock this guy so it doesn't go anywhere. Okay. Okay. And now for my age, I'm gonna tell you guys my age down to the day, unfortunately. Which is 37 years, 6 months, and 23 days. I'm also giving away my brother's age because he's my twin brother. So.
Maybe he's still here. I haven't seen him in the chat, but
he may have bailed. So 37 years, 6 months, 23 days. That's how old I am.
Exactly.
Exactly. And actually, I would like to use one of my pre-existing components. I want it to be, I'm going to break the state of it because I'm going to create a new component.
Good call.
Ungroup component. Make it a little narrower. Okay. So height of 40. I'll grab this text. I'll put it in here. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to
says plus 6 minutes.
Oh, this is true. I'm going to put like a shorthand of my age, 37 years, 6 months, 23 days. And then I'm going to do something that's kind of morbid, which is tell you that I also have 41 years remaining.
Oh boy.
And the calendar calculates that based on the life expectancy of your country. So for the US, the life expectancy is 78 years. Therefore, 41 years is left on my 100-year calendar, if you want to think about it that way. I'll let you all take a moment.
It's more than half.
To absorb that.
It's something to be optimistic about.
That's true. Yeah. Or it's almost half. You want to be pessimistic.
Yeah.
Okay. So now
I was just watching this movie earlier. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a documentary. Dick Johnson is Dead. And it kind of takes this, it's remarkable. I haven't even finished it, but it takes a lovely comedic approach to death. And I think it's something we often just see as so, like you said, morbid, but that's a cultural perception. And I really appreciate how this documentary documents the life of this man who it's about. And who's just playful with it in a way. Yeah.
It's definitely, I mean, I don't think of it as morbid so much. I think of it as kind of motivating for me getting like the tattoo of the 100 years. It was like, it's just a reminder to your time's precious, don't waste it kind of thing.
Absolutely.
All right. So I'm going to group this, move that back. And now I'm going to move this over here because I want to have a little settings too. So I'm going to use one of the Adobe plugins, which is really helpful. I'm going to go to the lower left-hand Lego block. I have an icons for design plugin, and I'm going to look for a settings icon. And I'll just grab this iOS settings icon. See, it just popped it right there for me, which is really awesome. Adjust the size a little bit.
Do you have a favorite plugin? Is this one of your favorites?
This is definitely one of the favorites because it's super useful. I mean, the fact that you can find any icon you want just on the fly like that it's pretty awesome. I have UI faces also is cool. User profiles where you could just drop in and it'll just fill with photos or images or calendars or whatever. So there's such a big list of plugins, and it's really a big, it's a big like advantage using XD to have all access to all these plugins that you can browse and look at.
That's great. Absolutely. What's the name of the plugin icon for the icon plugin?
Icons for Design.
Icons for Design. Yeah, it's one of the popular ones.
Oh, and there's a lorem ipsum. I need to get that actually and install it.
There you go.
While we're looking. Okay, so we've got our time remaining up here. I'm going to group that, and I'm going to move on. I don't want to get stuck in these tiny little things too much, so I'm going to move on to this main grid here.
The calendar. So, what everyone came
calendar.
To see.
I know it's the big moment. So I know that each row in this calendar, I know I'm going to be using the repeat grid, and I'm going to have each row is going to be a decade, so it's going to be 10. So I'm going to take this, which is 1066, and I'm going to do a little math. And I'm going to divide it by 10. Obviously, I probably should have done that math without the aid of a calculator.
No, it's okay.
And then I'm going to make this 106 pixels wide. Okay.
And this is going to be like left to right timeline style?
This is going to be, I'm going to put 100 years on the calendar this way.
Okay.
So I'm going to add a little number in the corner, which is a 0, because this is year 0. If you think about it, we're not born 1 year old. We're born 0 years old. So we'll start with 0 in the corner. And then I want this component to be, I want to be able to hover over this. So I'm going to make just the square a component, but not the number. And the reason is because when I use repeat grid, I'm going to drop a text file onto this number to generate the 0 to 100. And if it's all part of a component, that won't work, kind of like how we had just seen
with the images.
With the images. So I'm not going to make that mistake again. So I'll turn this into a component. I'll add a hover state where let's just turn the border darker, I guess. And then the hover, the main one can be a lighter border. Okay.
Good call.
So I can still group those though to do the repeat grid. So I'm going to repeat grid. I'm going to pull this way. I'm going to remove the spacing all the way down to 0 so that these lines touch each other. And then I'm going to pull that all the way out. And you can see it doesn't quite go to the edge, so I need to make this box a little bit bigger. We'll make it 107. And that just made everything bigger.
And now the margins are just a little adjusted.
Just a tiny bit off. There we go. So now it goes all the way to the edge.
Perfect.
And now we got to do the same thing here. So we got to pull this down and pull that up.
Look at this. Now that's that calendar feel.
Now we've got that, finally got that calendar feel. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Whoa, we need to do a couple more. I'm going to make this, I'm going to change the height of this.
Go for it.
Reduce it and see how
Adelisa is saying, can you say hi to me? Hello. Saying hello to you.
Hi, Adelisa. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. As a recap, while we're adjusting some things here, this is a 100-year age-based calendar. All these names on the left here, Martin Luther King, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, being able to plot everyone's life on an age basis, starting at birth all the way to death, rather than basing those off dates. And you can line up people's lives with each other. Really neat concept Josh came up with, inspired by his life.
Inspired by my tattoo. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so let's make these a little longer, and we can have it go off the grid. That's okay.
Yeah, it can scroll.
We can do a scroll. Cool. Okay. So the next trick I'm going to show you guys is using a text file, because I didn't want to type 100 numbers in each of these little text boxes. So I have this text file that I've set up that is just 0 through 100 on individual lines. And it's going to be very satisfying to drop it in here. So I drag that text file, I drop it right onto one number. Boom. Look at that.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And you can see that the number's off a little because this repeat grid is going beyond. It's showing part of another. I need to squeeze it in a little, and there we go.
That's why. Yeah.
Let's test this out. Oh, see, our hover is covering up the bottom just a tiny bit, so we need to move it down just a tiny bit. 1 pixel.
You've got the Hawkeye for pixel vision. That's for sure, Josh.
Any advice on when this, sometimes with the repeat grid, the spacing adjuster won't show up?
Yeah,
I think holding S is supposed to help. Is that right?
S. Oh, I don't know that trick.
But oh no, that's with a group with padding. Sorry.
Sometimes it's just that making sure you're at the right hierarchy in the layer stack, because sometimes you're too deep or sometimes you're not deep enough. It can be a little weird sometimes.
I'm just kind of making some little adjustments. I'm reducing the size of the numbers and making the calendar a little bit lighter. You know, when you're, a lot of design is kind of tweaking here and there, making things different.
Yeah, finding those tweaks on the fly. If things don't feel right, you can change them. Esther says, right. Reminds me of a progress bar. And just like the tattoo that Josh has, the progress bar. Absolutely.
Oh, so Esther, thank you for reminding me. I shouldn't have closed this gap, because what I want to do is add a progress bar, and I forgot about that.
Hey, there you go.
So what I'm going to do is at the top, I'm actually going to have a progress bar, because that's the loading of the decade. So let's reduce it to like 4. Let's move this one up. My brother just said, Josh and I are orphans, so we think about death a lot, which is life and death a lot, which is true. Both our parents have passed away. So it's probably something that's on our minds a little bit more, of this kind of timeline of life and death. And so to make an app that could accommodate that, that thinking was, I guess it was kind of the natural next step. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to put a marker. I'm going to put a marker of where I'm at. 37 years, halfway through, almost exactly halfway through, because my birthday's in June. Halfway through 37 years. I'm going to make it red. And I know some people are going to be upset about that, but
no, I don't think everyone loves the red.
Everybody loves the red. Maybe we could
just good.
Tone it down just a little bit.
Because other people will have other colors, right? So
yeah. So we'll tone it down a little bit though. And this is like the "you are here" marker. Okay, it's the marker that says this is where you're at in life right now. And I'm gonna fill up this timeline up to this point. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna put a border line here, make it 4 pixels.
In this timeline, the idea is that it's showing above each block, above each row of blocks.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So it's combining the view of a calendar.
It's a wrapping timeline, a wrapping progress bar, which I think is a really neat idea. I don't think I've seen that before.
Yeah. It goes decade by decade. So I'm going to go here. I think I need to make it a little bit thicker. Oh, actually, no, I don't want it. Okay, so, and then it's going to go all the way to this point in time right now. All the way up to now, okay? So now when I look at this, right, just adding that one little thing, you see, hey, I've lived out 37 and a half years of my 100-year timeline. It suddenly gives you this interesting perspective. So I'm going to keep going with that and saying, okay, I'm going to add a very cool hover state to this little marker here. So I'm going to turn it into a component. I'm going to add a hover state. In that hover state, you have to click into it. I'm going to select. I need to zoom in a little more. I can't get it. Sometimes you can't get things that are too close to each other.
Yeah,
there we go.
It can be a little finicky.
I'm going to make it a little bigger when you hover. So that'll be interesting. And then I'm going to grab this timeline. Oops. I'm going to grab these guys here. I'm going to copy them. And then I'm going to go back into the hover state. I'm going to paste them in there. I'm going to make them red. So they match this red.
I see what you're doing. Nice.
That didn't work though. Why didn't that work? Come on, guys. Border. Oh, there we go. Now it's working. Border, red. Okay. So now I'm going to go out of here. I'm going to go back to default state. Oh, that didn't. I must not have been. Sorry. Sorry, people. As I struggle with.
Were you in the wrong state there, or what was that?
It looks like maybe. It looks like it's just behind it. That's what it is.
Okay. That makes sense. Esther's also saying it would be fun to think of the micro interaction that the interface would do on your birthday. Yeah, there's an opportunity there.
I like that.
If you happen to tune in on your birthday. Or maybe you just have this like projected in your bedroom and you just wake up and see it every morning.
And just realize you're going to die.
Yeah.
So this hover state now is interesting because it gives you, I've got hovers for every single day, right? Or every year rather. And then when I hover over this, it fills my timeline like a load bar. And it says, this is where you're at, right? This will get even more interesting when we start adding events on here. So I'm going to do one more thing to this hover state. I'm going to add a little tooltip that pops up.
Nice.
And
What's it going to
we'll
say?
make it, it'll just give you your, I guess it'll give you your, it'll just say your now, because we just want to tell them like, this is where you're at in time, right?
Yeah. You are here almost, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like I said before.
Yeah, you are here. So we'll add a little caret arrow to this. Okay, and we'll say your now, because this is now.
And that's such an interesting way to phrase it, your now, because everyone has a different now, right? In the past, that was a different now.
Exactly.
You have a different now than everyone in the chat. Ooh, we're getting philosophical.
Yes. Okay. So there, we got a nice little interaction now that shows you exactly where you are in time. Cool. Okay. Let's keep going. I'm determined to get some Martin Luther King events on here.
Absolutely.
So I have a little app that I've done I mapped out some timelines. This was interesting too, because none of the timelines I found would put their age. It would just give you a year. But this is an age-based calendar. We really care about the age, right? So let's put some of these things on here. So obviously at year 0, Martin Luther King is born, and we're not necessarily going to add everybody on there, but we are going to put that he enrolls in college when he is 15 years old, which is crazy. he was a smart guy, right? So we'll say, we'll go to year 15 and we'll add an event there.
Wow.
Okay, so let's make it the color to match Martin Luther King's color. I'm going to make it a light version of that though.
Mm-hmm.
And then I am going to say goes, enrolls in college.
So will the above app have a lot of like built-in celebrities or well-known figures with these events baked in?
Yes. So, oops. So what you'll be able to do is hit this explore button, and we're gonna map out what that modal looks like probably tomorrow. And you'll be able to explore and look at a bunch of different people that we've already put in there and their timelines. So you can automatically just add timelines and start comparing them to your life. And then if you want to, you can map out your own and map out your family, and things get really interesting when you start putting everyone in parallel together like that. It's some weird time things happen, right?
Time warp.
Yes. Okay. So we put Martin Luther King enrolls in college. It was in April. So, oh no, September. So it was the second half of the year. So I'm going to put a little marker. So we use this timeline to put little marks to show where that happened in time. Okay.
So that's showing it's toward the end of the year?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I want to do is I'm going to turn this into a component. And I'm going to do this same trick that we just did. I'm going to say hover. And I'm going to go to my hover state, and then I'm going to add oops, what's happening? I need to click in here. Sorry about that. I'm going to add an ellipse here to show where he is in time. I guess I'm going to cover up my dot so that I didn't really need the marker. Well, this is the hover state, so yeah, I did need it.
Yeah. You're good.
Okay.
Esther's bringing up another point here, like an inspirational competition with your favorite celebrity's life. And like, I'm curious what your take on the competitive aspect of this is.
What is the tell me more about that. The competitive aspect.
Because you're comparing yourself with other people, and like, people. Well, I guess it's kind of true. It's on the person that's using this app, their perception. But I could see how they could easily maybe interpret like life events as success metrics, and like having more of those is better.
I don't think, for me, I hope it's not really a competitive thing. Although it is interesting when you map this stuff out, because you definitely see, like I said, Steve Jobs started Apple at 21, and I'm like, okay, that was a long time ago for me. But I don't think it needs to be competitive. I hope it's more just it's perspective. That's the hope for me.
Perspective. I do think that is different. Yeah.
So I'm going to go here. I'm going to steal this. I'm just stealing this tooltip. I got to set this back to default state. I'm going to go to my little goes to college. And then I'm going to paste this in here. So this is part of the component now. You can see this green border moving around stuff. So I'm going to say, okay, so let me do some math. 37 minus 15, 22 years ago when I was 15. That's 22 years ago. So because this is age-based, I'm showing that when Martin Luther King went to college when he was 15, that's 22 years ago from my current now. That's just kind of weird to think about, right? Even though it was in the past. Yeah. It was 22 years ago from where I'm at right now in my life. So let's go back here. Let's play this. Oh, let's just go through the whole thing. If you've just joined us, We've got a login screen with a splash screen. And then we get here.
Wow. It's really coming together. I love it.
And now we've
Jessica
got,
loves it too, saying,
yeah,
she said, I like the name above, and it being with the mountains has me thinking it's a play on elevation. I like how you're trying to elevate, better yourself every day by prioritizing your life with a calendar. I like that. I like that take.
I like that too. Yeah, I think that's part of the name is, for me, it was like, how do you give someone a tool that lets you zoom out? Like zoom out from what we're obsessed with as a culture, which is the minute-to-minute news. It's the messages, the tweets, the everything that comes in. And if something is more than a day old, it's worthless. How do you zoom out to decades? And how do you say, oh, where am I like right now in the zoomed out version of my timeline? Because we look at people in history like that, but for ourselves, we don't do that. So it's like a living timeline, right? So now we have this hover for your now. And then we have this interactive way to hover over events in the past that someone else experienced, like Martin Luther King, and it tells us that he enrolled in college 22 years ago, which is kind of crazy, right? I mean, that's a great, it's, for me, it's depressing because it means I'm old, but for you or other people, it could show you that, maybe someone watching this now is 15 years old, and they're at the same age Martin Luther King started kind of his journey, breaking from the norm of what other people were doing.
Or you could even see with other people that, like, hey, maybe they changed the world, but like maybe they didn't do it until their 40s or 50s, right?
That's right.
It's not all about that competitive aspect we were talking about before. It's like there's still time, right? So there's that.
Well, that was one of the things that I mapped on here was my grandmother lived to be 103. And so I put her on this calendar and it was like, whoa, I still have, almost 70 years to live if I live to be, as old as my grandmother. So it gives you good perspective both ways, not just looking in the past, but also looking in the future. Nat says, don't try to compete with MLK. I think that's probably wise words.
Yeah, and Golden Rose saying, and 37 isn't old, so don't worry.
And I should mention for anyone who's just joined, that probably just means Golden Rose is older than me. I should mention for anyone who's just joined too, that if you want to try this out in real life, this is a project me and my friend James Mortensen, who's an amazing developer. We're building this together, and you can go to above.app and you can actually sign up to be on the wait list to try this thing out. It's not going to be ready till mid-year probably, but I would love to have feedback. And if it's earlier, then you guys will be the first ones to be able to test it out.
I cannot wait. I'm certainly signing up right after this.
So I'm going to put a future event now. So I'm going to say, so if we look here, what's really crazy is King was ordained as a pastor at 19 years old, which is crazy. He graduated when he was 22 years old with a Bachelor of Divinity. He appeared on the cover of Time magazine when he was 28. So that's something, right? So I'm going to put, but let me jump. I'll do more of these. I'll map more of these and actually probably map more of these out, maybe off camera tomorrow. So I have it populated a little more. We don't spend too much time populating, but I want to put a future event. So I'm going to say, he gives the King leads 6,000 protesters in support of striking sanitation in Memphis. The march ends with violence and looting. When he was 39 years old, this was, shortly before he died, just 1 month before he died. But I want to put that on the calendar. So let me put this. It was March 23. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to move it into 39, year 39.
Mm-hmm. Wow, how eerie is that you can see how your lifespan is now comparing against to when he almost passed away. Yeah,
exactly. That's what's like, I think we tend to think of figures in history, at least I do, as, you see these black and white photos of them and you think of them as old or older people. And then when you map out their lives, you realize like no, a lot of these people were very young when they were doing this stuff. They weren't old. They weren't waiting until they felt like adults to start making a change,
Yeah.
in people's lives and in society. They were doing it when they were 21, 24, early 20s. So it's really cool to map it out and see that, right?
Yeah, just because it wasn't a long time ago doesn't change the significance.
That's
or
right.
In a way, it makes it more significant seeing it on this aspect.
Yes, exactly.
Voodoo Val, thank you for linking in an actual hyperlink to above.app where people can sign up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I think I want to make sure that I'm not messing this hover state up. Okay, I think positioning won't mess it up since this is an instance. So I'm just going to go here, and I'm not going to do red for any future events for the load bar, because I tend to think of the future as unknown. So I'm going to make that like a black almost.
I dig that.
And then I need to move this, and it will say, let's say, 1 year. I don't know exactly how many months it is.
And that's the time until that
yes.
point? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So we'll make this tooltip a little bigger. We hope we don't mess up our other component we have on here. And let's test that out.
Yes, all the way. Oh, okay.
Do we want to go all the way? Okay, we can do it. Okay, let's do it.
As a recap,
it's satisfying.
Log in, loading animation. Boom. Oh, okay. In the calendar.
We've got a cool hover state, you're now. We've got 22 years ago. We've got 1 year, 6 months from now.
It looks great.
Martin Luther King led a protest of 6,000 marchers. Awesome. I feel like it's coming together. It's starting to feel like a functional calendar, right?
Absolutely. And absolutely. So I imagine tomorrow you're going to fill in more of these, and we're going to flush out, I imagine, more of the interface. It's going to be so cool to see it in its full state.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into like adding a new event and exploring and looking at other people's timelines. So we'll get deep into the, the UI bowels of this thing in the future. How are we doing on time?
We're still good on time. If there's any last things you wanted to add, we still have time for that.
Okay. Sure.
But we will begin wrapping up soon. But yeah, absolutely. These different colors, for different figures, will start to make this actually a very colorful, abstract representation of everyone's life together.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to add my dad on here. So he's got this kind of periwinkle color. And I'm going to say I'm born, which is really weird because my dad was 39 when I was born. So,
oh my gosh,
I need to move this stuff up.
Yeah, Voodoo Val is thank you for coming in with the assistance here, saying we have 10 minutes left, just over 10 minutes. And if anyone does have a question, now is the time to ask for sure. Josh is doing so many rad things as the COO of a startup, as well as doing this now as it seems like a side project, right? It's just kind of like doing all these different things. You do freelance work. If anyone has any questions about all the various capabilities, go for it.
Yeah, I would love to hear now. Okay, so I'm adding this where I'm born.
You're born.
Really trippy.
Yeah, that is trippy. It's you in your own timeline.
Yes,
exactly. It's your dad.
It starts to get like
everything.
Tenet or Inception or something. Nat says there's more time to have more children. No, there's not. I have enough children.
Oh, you have kids?
I have two daughters. Yeah, I actually
lovely.
have a teenager and a 11-year-old. So you can do that when you're as old as me. Okay, so I'm born is 1 year. Oh, it's probably more like let's see, not 1 year, 6 months. Let's say 1 year, 8 months from now, and we got to change the color of the dot because that's my dad's calendar to this kind of periwinkle blue. Okay. And last but not least, we need to add a marker because I was born in June. So it's midway through that year. Okay, let's try this now. We've got
Awesome.
I'm born. We've got Martin Luther King enrolls in college. I need to change that too. He leads the march. And then we've got the past, which was 22 years ago. So you can see the culture has this. The undercurrents of ageism are strong with this one. You can be ageist with yourself. It's okay, Golden Rose.
I like what you said about providing a new perspective and how this adds a new perspective.
I hope it does that. I mean, my hope is that when people start using this and laying out their family members' timelines, this is a good example why I put my dad on there, because I tend to think of him as being like a very young man when I was born, right? Just because you think of your parents as super young when you were born. Mm-hmm. And then to realize he was actually older than I am right now, and I've got a teenage kid, it gives me this kind of new perspective, right? So that's what I hope is when people use this, they're able to do something like that.
Absolutely. I liked what you said, zoom out. That's huge. It reminds me of this my thesis project I did in college, where it was the same concept of zooming out on your life, but it wasn't about time. It was about geography. And what it was this, I built this this replica of like a space capsule, and you would go in and you'd basically kind of launch, and you're looking at this projection imagery of the Earth, and you actually zoom out ever so slowly, kind of like the project Herman Miller did, the film.
You built this?
Yeah, it was really fun.
Way.
Or not Herman Miller,
awesome.
Eames, sorry. Eames made a film that was kind of like zooming out on the planet. And the idea is, yeah, it was this really slow zoom out, and you just stood in this room, and you sat down, and you're just staring at the Earth, and it just kind of slowly just fades out into the distance.
Wow.
Because I was trying to emulate something that astronauts talk about, which is the overview effect. And they say when they look down at Earth from this new scale, this new perspective, yes, that changes their life. And then all of a sudden that they have a new meaning of life and a new course of action. And that's at the geological perspective. So I could totally see how that could come into play, that overview effect. You can look it up on Wikipedia, the overview effect.
Yeah. I've actually heard of that. Yeah.
And I see how that applies here.
Exactly. And I'm a big space nerd. So I think that, that's definitely part of the thinking. I mean, even part of the thinking here is, theories of how kind of parallel past, present, futures are all happening at the same time. I think it's called cube theory or something like that, where you're saying, scientists, theorists basically are saying the past and present are actually happening simultaneously. We just can only experience them in a linear fashion. And so all that thinking kind of went into this project to think how do you give perspective? How do you run time in parallel with each other? All this kind of weird stuff that I think is an interesting way to kind of present it, right?
Oh, it's huge. Okay.
So
I have a question, or what were you gonna?
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I was gonna bring us back down to reality from the philosophical realm.
Yeah.
And ask you, so you're working with a developer on this. Can you tell us what that's like to work with a developer, and what are the challenges you've faced, or kind of the magic moments?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is getting started with, I mean, finding a developer that wants to partner with you. You have to work really well together. And I had worked with this developer on projects in the past, James. But some of the for us, we're at an advantage with being a two-man team because I'm really proficient in front-end coding. So I can do all the HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But part of that is finding the developer that isn't just kind of doing something just because, oh, this might make money or whatever. This is someone, when I talk to James, he's like, oh, I've been on ancestry.com. I've been looking at my family history. Like, this is interesting to me. And so I think finding a partner that is like actually interested in what you're trying to do and shares a similar mindset, that's really important. Because I wanted to work with someone who I thought actually believed in what I was doing and had like, oh, this is a new idea on time. This is a new perspective. And when he started looking at the app and the designs, he was like, oh, you could use it for ancestry.com, right? You could integrate it and show timelines that are being built in other apps and put them in here. You could show a timeline of your finances if you keep investing $1,000 a week, whatever. There's ways to expand this. And so to find that developer who got the vision, loved it, and then was like, yeah, I'd like to help with it. That's kind of the biggest thing. Pick the right person. If you don't, then, I mean, that's like anything, right? If you don't, it's going to be a little difficult, I think.
You'll be able to play off the energy and it'll carry you so far. Oh my gosh. Alyssa had a question, which I believe the answer is yes, asking if the user will be able to enter in the details of family members, like events, as well as their own. And answers yes, I believe there.
Yes.
And Gabriella said, this Adobe Live is the most interesting I've ever been in. I'm loving it.
Wow.
Bump,
that's amazing.
Bump. That's my heartbeat. We feel so, yeah, we love that you shared that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm adding, just to tell you what I'm doing here, I'm adding a drop-down menu to this header up here that says 41 years remaining, to give a little bit more context to the user as to why they're seeing this, so they don't think this is a threat maybe to their life.
Yeah. I like that, easing the tension a little bit there, right? Like we were saying,
yeah,
like
exactly.
it's not a race, and it's not like a deadline. It's here's perspective. It's time. This is an amount of time away from right now.
That's right. Yeah. So we'll say this is based on your birth date of June 26, 1983.
Wonderful.
Now you know Nat's birthday.
I love it. Okay, Josh, what's next when we come back tomorrow? What are you designing?
When we come back tomorrow, I am going to be designing the Explore tab of this, the modals, the pop-ups, so that you can actually see how you would add your timeline or family members, how you would add an event, and how you would explore each of these different timelines when you first open the app. My goal is that when you open above, you can immediately start exploring. And when you hit that explore button, you're going to see a grid of well-known historical figures. And
have you already
pop them into your calendar?
Have you already started building out what that library of figures is going to be and their timelines?
Yeah, I mean, this is an example of some of the people, these illustrations. That's
and you already have. Wow.
This.
Yeah, and that will kind of actually, like we were saying earlier, this is a real app that Josh is building. So let's put that link in the chat again, above.app. And all of us in this Adobe Live exclusive can get in on the product once it's live. And let's take a walk through one more time from the beginning and see what it looks like. Yep. And like we said, we'll be back tomorrow, bringing this experience all the way to the finish line.
All right, so we've got our login page. We've hooked it up with some really nice animations with a splash screen and a load screen. If I click login, that goes away. We've got a little load bar at the top.
Nice. And
then we fade into our calendar. We've got our timelines on the left side, and we've got hover states on everything, so it's very interactive. And you can see my now is at 37.5 years. And if I look at past events, I could see that was 22 years ago, Martin Luther King enrolled in college. 1 year, 6 months from now, when he led a 6,000 person march and was ultimately assassinated at 39 years of age. And 1 year and 8 months until I'm born on my father's timeline. So
Wow.
If this seems interesting to you, please join tomorrow because we'll get into even kind of more exciting previews of what's going to come in the actual app once it's built out. And I would love to have your input and see more.
Absolutely. Josh Iwata, everyone. Oh my gosh, we are back tomorrow. Same time frame. Same time frame. Come back. I'm Sam Anderson. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you've had a blast. I certainly have. Thank you to everyone in the chat, and we will be back thinking about time and rocking our world through timelines tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. See you later.
Thanks. Bye.